I've done this podcast for the last 12 months, every week. And there's one name which my guests, the people that sit in front of me, the successful athletes, entrepreneurs, business people from all walks of life, and just generally ambitious, successful people kept saying, and it was Mo's name. You know, I hype up these episodes a lot, but I've never said this. This was my favorite podcast of all time because of the lasting value that I know it will have on my life. I think I cried twice in this podcast episode. Who is Mo? He's a genius business person. So smart, in fact, that Google made him the head of Googlex, which was their special projects division where they do the most crazy, insane things from flying cars to machine learning, anything a genius would be capable of doing. He's also a remarkable entrepreneur. But the thing that will bring the most value to you in this episode, if you listen to it, will be what he says about happiness. And some of the things he says today have just created these like personal revelations in my head where I genuinely feel that I have to go and sit down in a room alone and think about them for the next couple of weeks. Genuinely life-changing. And you've never heard me this enthusiastic on the podcast. So if you're ever going to trust me with an episode, trust me on this one. Are you ready? I hope you are. So why did you write a book about happiness?
That's the most selfish thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, if you know, my story was, so I was very successful at a very young age. So unusual. I mean, I'm born and raised in Egypt, educated in public school, public university in Egypt. So my biggest dream was I was going to become sales manager in IBM Egypt. That was my biggest dream. And look at what happened. I mean, I went through beyond my wildest expectations. Chief business officer of GoogleX is literally the second best job on the planet. Okay, and you know, I had all of this, you know, that people dream of at a very young age. At 29, I had you know, the big villa with the swimming pool. With you know, all of the money, all of the suits, all of the luxury cars. From 25 when I had nothing to 29 when I had everything, I had the most wonderful woman in my life, beautiful, wise, sensitive, loving, who gave me 2 wonderful kids, and I was clinically depressed. And it's not an unusual story where we keep chasing all of those things. I mean, my luck was that I hit my middle age crisis at 29 when I achieved everything they told me I was supposed to achieve and couldn't find happiness. And so I ended up in a place where I started to research the topic, just like I would anything else. And I couldn't get a word. I just couldn't get it. You know, they told me to meditate. My engineering mind was like, tell me why, explain something to me, tell me why it works, right? You know, if they told me to say Om, I would get really angry. I still don't say Om, right? But the idea is my brain wouldn't get it. And instead of me rejecting that, I started to look at those topics as an engineer. So I would start to do literally, you know, like the scientific method. I would take data points and measurements and try to do fitting lines and curves and charts on topics like happiness. And, you know, it started to work for me. So 4 years in, I started to really become a little better. And I would go back to my wonderful son, Ali, who was born a tiny little Zen monk. He knew those things instinctively. And even as a young child, you know, age 8, I think, was when I started to discuss those things with him. He would listen there and ask me a couple of questions, clearly to entertain me. And then basically say, well done, Papa, this is amazing. You could have just asked me, okay? And then he would literally explain it to me from the heart. So how the heart feels it. I would get how the left brain sees it, and he would get how the heart feels it.
Your son at 8?
He was so wise, Stephen. He was so wise. Ali, when he was 16, I promise you, my friends will tell you, I publicly announced when I grow older, I want to be like Ali. He was a very unusual being. And he spoke very little, very, very, very little. He was either laughing all the time and being silly and goofy, or when you asked him a serious question, he would stay silent and then speak 8 words, okay? And those 8 words would literally reshape your world. Okay. And I noticed that at a very young age for him. And so I started to consult with him on a lot of topics, And on happiness specifically, together we ended up with a model that worked. We had the happiness equation, we had the happiness model, and it worked. And it worked so well that when we lost him, sadly, when he was 21, my intention shifted from spending the rest of my life in grief to actually writing what he taught me so that I can share it with the world. And that basically determined the next life for me after the life of the executive and the chief business officer and stock options and the luxury and the cars. That second life really was the result of his departure.
And during that period, the inspiration that inspired you to write the book at the very beginning and go on that journey to really find the answer to happiness, you said you were clinically depressed.
Yes.
Now, for people that don't know what that means practically, can you give a description?
Nothing would make me happy. And you can literally, so I interviewed Ruby Wax on my podcast on Slow Mo, and Ruby was known for her sometimes depression and sometimes teaching, and she would describe it as they cut your head off and fill you with concrete when you're depressed. You're unable to do anything. You're unable to enjoy anything. You're unable to engage, right? And it comes in different layers. But for me, the challenge was I was so successful. I was so successful. I literally could print money on demand. I mean, there were times when my wife would say, "Can we change the car?" And I would say, "So what would you like?" And she would say this, and I would say, "Okay, wait until Wednesday." And I would be on the stock market, trading for a few days and making money. Right? It was so crazy because of my math skills before the age of machine trading was really as entrenched as it is today. I could make money on demand. And yet I poured that money on my life and I couldn't find happiness. Okay. And that really shakes you because now you can get the vacations they're talking about. You can wear what they told you is going to make you happy. You can buy the things that they told you is going to make you happy, but nothing's making you happy. And then it started to reflect on my family. And I remember vividly the turning point was a Saturday morning when, my daughter, Ali, my son, was that little Zen monk. My daughter is life itself. She truly is pure joy. Okay. And she was, it was a Saturday morning. She's jumping up and down in joy, saying, Mommy said we're going to go there. Can we stop and get, ice cream on the way? Can we do that? And she's so happy. And I was doing whatever busy people do, reading an email or whatever crap. And basically I looked at her, slowly raising my head in grumpiness and said, "Can we please be serious for a minute?" Okay. What's serious? She was 5. And I could see with my own eyes as my beautiful daughter's heart broke. Okay. And I think to me, that was basically the moment where I said, I can't live with this person anymore. I can't live with me. And when you see that, you make that choice. And sadly, most people who are successful, like your audiences, actually wait until that moment happens. When they're old, when they've gone to the point where the good days have passed, the days where you could have actually built that connection with your family or with, enjoyed your life a little more are behind you, and then they wake up. I was so lucky that I woke up when I was 29.
And so you have this idea, as you say there, to write this book and to answer this question that has become so relevant and important to answer in your life. And as you're on that journey and consulting with Ali passes.
Yes. No, so Ali left after he trained me well enough. So it's really interesting. I mean, I started my research maybe when he was 6 he was 6, 7. And finished when he was 18, 19. And you couldn't dent my happiness then. I was the example of happiness. I mean, I'm a Middle Eastern, and at the time I used to work at Microsoft. At least through that journey, I used to work at Microsoft, and Microsoft's office was in Seattle. So I would fly every month for a week to Seattle, from Dubai to JFK, and then from JFK to Washington. And every time I landed in JFK, I got that random security check where they give me a red envelope and take me to Homeland Security. It was really not the kindest of treatment, if you want, with a stupid smile on my face. Like I flew 12 hours, then I stood in line for an hour and a bit. And then they gave me that envelope, and there is a guard walking next to me now, assuming I'm a criminal until proven otherwise. And they sit me in that room, and I have that stupid smile on my face. Nothing could dent my happiness. Okay? I have beautiful thoughts inside me. I have compassion for every one of those officers, that they're just doing their job. And of course, they're worried about their country. And it's really weird. And to the point that I did this 37 times in a row. Okay? And to the point that I would walk into the Homeland Security office and the officers behind the counter would go like, Mr. Gates is back. Okay, they know I'm the guy from Microsoft. I've been there last month. I would walk to the counter and they say, answer the same 10 questions we asked you last time. So I would say, this is my name, this is my mother's name, this is right, and go through them one by one without a dent in my happiness. But then life tests you. And by the way, I mean, we can talk about this, but of course, you can feel unhappy, but I found a way to always come back to happiness if you want. And then life tests you, and I think life nudges you. It seems that Solve for Happy needed to be written, okay? And I had the notes for it in 2011, but hey, Chief Business Officer of GoogleX, busy. And I kept delaying it until Ali basically came to visit us in Dubai, 2014, and he was diagnosed with a very simple appendix inflammation. And it's literally the simplest surgical operation not known to humankind. It's literally a 4 or 5 minute thing. But 5 mistakes happened, 5 in a row. Every one of them was preventable. Every one of them was fixable. But 5 in a row fixed wrong. And 4 hours later, Ali was gone. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to understand how it feels. Even today, 7 years later, losing a child is just the hardest thing ever. At least for me, it's the hardest thing ever. Like, if life had taken all my money and all what I've achieved and, made me homeless, it would have probably felt less painful than losing him. But our reaction was very, very unusual. Instead of trying to, fight with life, I simply said, okay, he's gone. There's nothing I can do to bring him back. But I can make his essence alive. I can keep his essence in this world. And his essence to me was what he taught me. He saved my life with what he taught me about happiness. And so I sat down to write. First time that I really write in English, as English is not my first language. I wrote for 4.5 months straight. And, if you've read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, when you know your life's purpose, the universe conspires to make it happen. I just can't tell you what happened since then. I mean, every part of the universe is just pushing for this mission to work. From finding my agent at a time where he was actually not feeling great about his life. So he kept saying, can you send me another chapter? Can you send me another chapter? Until I sent the whole book saying, well, what's he going to do with this? And then literally we meet and he basically says, can I please represent you? We go out, meet 17 publishers within a week. In New York, in the capital of publishing, and then things roll to the point that I came here in the UK literally a week after the publication of Solve for Happy, and I had that interview very famous with Channel 4 News, which within 3 days was the highest watched news clip on the history of Channel 4, to the point that the CEO is starting to wonder, like, I've been broadcasting violence and war for the last I don't know how many years, and my highest watched clip, at the time it was 37 million views, is about happiness, okay? Which obviously is understandable. It is the pandemic of our time. Within 3 days after that, we were watched 87 million times, okay? More than double the highest. And the movement was starting. The 1 billion happy movement was starting. Basically, I think it was a very strong confirmation to the world that this is something the world needs. And you can actually feel today that there is a shift, not because of me only, but because there are so many people coming into this. There is a big shift now between employee satisfaction and employee happiness, between, let's just work on mental health and actually let's work on happiness and so on and so forth. It seems that the world is getting it, that we're not supposed to be grinding ourselves and giving away our lives for things that we think are going to make us happy, we might as well be happy and get everything as a result, because we can then be successful, we can be engaged, we can be lovable, we can be, supported, and so on and so forth.
It's just remarkable in my mind that you can lose the most important thing to you, as you've described it in your life, your son, to human error, and still not fall into resentment or bitterness or...
What would it do?
Regret.
What would it do? I mean, of course. I mean, I took steps to make sure that things are corrected so that no one else gets hurt, right? But what would it do? I mean, I was very prominent at the time. When Ali died, I was chief business officer of Google, but I was still between Dubai and California. So I spent half of my time in Dubai. And it was after 7 years of being vice president of emerging markets for Google. So I had opened half of Google's offices globally. I was very, well connected to the business leaders and government leaders in Dubai. And so when Ali died, we got a call from the top of the Ministry of Health saying, we heard what happened. I'm so sorry, Mo. Would you mind if we perform an autopsy on Ali's body to get to the bottom of this? So I looked at his mother sitting next to me, most wonderful woman on the planet, with her eyes teary. And I said, Nibel, would you mind if they do that? And she raised his head and said, would it bring Ali back? And that one sentence anchored us in the truth, okay? You see, the problem with grief is that the cycle of grief takes you 5 steps. The very last step is acceptance, okay? And that step of acceptance could take you 70 years sometimes. For us, the truth was glaringly obvious 4 hours later. There's nothing you can do to bring him back. This is it. And the finality of death is so corrective of all of our human illusions. This is it. He's not coming back. So what can you do now? And my brain started to attack me. My brain started to say, you should have, the one thought for the first few days was, you should have driven him to another hospital. You should have driven him, until I said to my brain, like, okay, I wish I could go back and drive him to another hospital. I can't. So can you please bring me a thought I can act upon? Okay. And so I had a couple of days of silence, and then my wonderful daughter comes to me. They were very, very close. And she said, Papa, Ali had a dream a couple of weeks ago, and he called and told me about it. And I think it's very relevant. You need to know. Okay. And I said, what, baby? And she said, he dreamt he was everywhere and part of everyone. And that it felt so amazing that he didn't want to be back in his body. And when she told me, I still tear up thinking about it today. When she told me this, my blurry brain could only listen to, this is my master giving me my target. That's the only thing I heard. It's like, make me everywhere and part of everyone. That's what I heard. And at the time I was head of Google. I understood billions. I knew how to get a message to billions of people. So what did I do? I literally said out loud, consider it done. It's done. Okay? And I told you, when I wrote Solve for Happy, it was the most selfish thing you can ever do. I wanted the essence of my son to live on. And so I basically wrote it with the intention of, okay, I'm going to make him everywhere and part of everyone. I'm just going to spread this beautiful essence to 10 million people. And then, I don't know, 70 years later, through 6 degrees of separation, a tiny bit of him will be everywhere and part of everyone. That was my blurry brain. But maybe it was also life's way of saying, share something, do something useful. Enough building phones and building, faster engines. And, maybe the world needs something different. Maybe share something that actually is needed by humanity.
Under all of this, you're inferring something which I think will annoy a lot of people. And that is that happiness is a choice.
Oh, totally.
And that you can choose to be happy.
Totally.
And that if you're unhappy, and really for many circumstances in our life, day to day, in work and love and relationships, personal responsibility is the answer. And
it's entirely on you.
And a lack thereof is the cause.
Absolutely. You know what you just did? You've just lost us 88% of the audience.
I know. Do you know why I know? Because I did a tweet one day about this. Yeah. And what my tweet was, there's like a mental model, but there's a reframing that I think has brought me happiness, which is when something happens to me, I used to, like many people say, X thing that happened has pissed me off.
Yeah.
And just by changing that sentence to, I've pissed myself off because of X thing.
Absolutely.
And I tweeted that. I was like, try it. Just like reframe it and take personal responsibility for how you're feeling. And in the comment section, everyone was like, nope.
Yep.
People don't like the idea that they have control over their emotional responses.
So when I write books in general, I write them like software. So I issue a beta version, okay, and I get 270 people. I don't know why 270.
I heard that's fascinating.
Yeah, I get 270 people to read it on Google Docs. So I give them editor privileges, so I can actually edit the text, right? And then something fascinating happens. They edit the text, and then others edit what they edited. Okay, and there is a conversation happening, and basically it takes the book to its best possible version, if you want. In Solve for Happy, I had a sentence on page 11 that basically said exactly what you said. Happiness is a choice. Okay, and at that page, I lost 8% of the readers. Okay, and I looked into the information that they gave me about themselves, the early readers, and most of the 8% that left were already in depression. Okay. And to tell someone it's your responsibility to get yourself out of this horrible place that you're in is quite disturbing, because we like the idea of saying, no, hold on. No, it's not me. Life is treating me really badly. That's why I'm not happy. Okay. I can't do anything about it. Life took my son. Life took my son. I have the right to be unhappy. Yes, life took your son. That's true. And you have the right to be unhappy, but you're never going to get out of unhappiness if you wait for life to bring him back, or you wait for life to correct its action. Okay? The only way you can come out of unhappiness is if you choose and say, okay, it's going to be a long journey. It's going to take a lot of time. Okay? And I'm going to try, but I'll get there. And neuroplasticity proves that. Neuroplasticity basically tells you that if you just run a happiness kind of activity once a day, every day your brain will be better at it. And I mean, please don't get me wrong, but what do most of us do every day? We watch negative news, we swipe on toxic positivity, and we're just drowning ourselves in negativity. And then what happens? What happens is we become really good at being negative. We become really good at finding what's wrong with life. We become very good at, getting pissed off with the prime minister, right? Because it's an activity we do on a daily basis. So your brain goes like, this must be important for her or him. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I have the neurons aligned around that. And so we're basically configuring our brains to be unhappy. If you're constantly watching, news media, right? You're literally building your muscles that are concerned and are, critical and are worried about the world, when in reality, most of the time, you can't do anything about it.
There's something in there which is clearly a theme in, I think, 3 topics we've touched on: the passing of your son. You talked there about COVID, and other elements, which is this theme of like radical acceptance.
Oh, absolutely.
Like instant radical acceptance.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is what I call the Jedi Master level of happiness. So there are 3 levels of happiness, right? If you really think about it, I call it the happiness flow chart. Events are going to piss you off. It's just the truth. If you can manage to acknowledge your emotion and say, "Oh my God, I feel. Am I angry? Is this anger? I mean, is this what I'm feeling?" And then you take that feeling and you say to yourself, "Okay, interesting. I am angry. I need to do something about it." I will give you 3 steps. Okay. The beginner's level is ask yourself if what you're thinking is true. Your partner said something hurtful on Friday. Your thought is he or she doesn't love me anymore. Okay? Ask yourself if that thought is true. If it isn't, drop it. There is no point to be unhappy. If it is, then let's go to the black belt level of unhappiness, which is, can I do something about it? That's the second question. Is it true is question 1. Can I do something about it is question 2, right? And honestly, by the way, it doesn't take more than 2 seconds to feel the emotion, ask yourself if it's true, and then go to can I do something about it? And if yes, then do it. What are you waiting for? Text him or text her and say, "Baby, can we please talk over dinner? What you said on Friday hurt me." Okay? Instead of just banging your head against the table, hoping that they will find out and come and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was teaching. This story really hurts me. I was teaching, when before lockdown, I taught a lot of people in workshops and seminars, more than 20,000 people. One day, one of them comes to me in the first break and says, "What are you talking about? What do you mean happiness is a choice? You have no idea what happened to me." Okay? And I said, "Okay." And she said, "When I was 17." She was 74 at the time. Can you believe that? 57 years of holding on to one thought, hitting her head against the wall. Right? And I hugged her. I cried. And I said, "Did it work? Did all of that work? Or was the better thought, okay, it was horrible, but can I do something about it?" Okay? And that's question number 2. That's black belt. Sometimes, however, there's nothing you can do about it. Whatever she experienced could be irreversible. What I have experienced, the loss of Ali, is irreversible. There's nothing you can do about it. Okay? And I'm not asking everyone to get there quickly, but the Jedi master level of happiness is to say, okay, it happened and I have no choice to change it. There is nothing I can do to fix it. So can I accept it, but not surrender and lie down and, and die, accept it and then start to do something to make my life better despite its presence, or maybe because of its presence. Okay? Can I accept that Ali died and start to spread his message so that my life and the life of others become better? Can I accept that I'm locked down and start my podcast so that I can use the time where I'm not traveling? Can I do that? I call that committed acceptance. Okay? And it's very simple. If you commit and if you accept things you can't change and commit to make your life better despite of or because of their presence, nothing can beat you. Nothing can beat you. And yeah, is it horrible that I actually managed to move on and not hit my head against the wall for 27 years? Does that say I don't love Ali? What are you talking about? I adore Ali. I cry about missing him still today, right? It's not that there is nothing to prove in that. What I can prove is I love him so much that I actually dedicate my life to spreading his message. That's so much better than sitting there and saying, life hit me. I don't like life, right? Okay, that's a 6-year-old attitude, honestly, okay? Adults will say, okay, and especially business people, your audiences, the market changes all the time. Do you sit down and go like, I lost another deal? Or do you just get up and say, why did we lose this deal? What can we do about it, right? And if there is something wrong with the product, can we change the product, right? And actually this approach of, is it true? Can I do something about it? Can I accept it and commit? I learned that in business. Okay, so I've spent most of my career, I was managing managers. And what do managers do? They open your door and they sit down and complain. Okay, and after a while, it becomes too much. So my attitude was very straightforward. I would give them 10 minutes to vent, then 10 minutes to ask them, is this true? Okay, is there anything you're missing? Is the legal team also nice, not just making your life miserable, right? Have you seen evidence that they've helped you before? So, is it true? And then I go like, so now, great, last 10 minutes of the meeting, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to be able to improve it, fix it, or are we going to accept it and do something despite its presence? And it's a very simple business approach. Now, most of us do that in business. But when it comes to our personal life, we don't do that. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, most of us, by the way, who do that in business are very successful in business. And most of us who do that in life are very successful in life. It's not just happy. It makes us successful because it doesn't waste our cycles on things that are not necessary. So if you can do it at work, do it at home, do it in your life, do it in your relationships. It's really a very straightforward flowchart.
You talked about, when you were talking about the chatter that arrived after Ali's passing, and it was telling you maybe you should have driven him to another hospital, maybe you should have done this, and you could have done this differently. That is, everybody has that chatter show up in their minds at certain points, which seems to be, not necessarily your best friend, and is sometimes suggesting that you should do X, Y, and Z, which would probably be destructive. What you said following that is that you almost like disassociated from it, and it wasn't you. You're almost describing it as if it was someone else in your head.
Absolutely. I call my brain Becky. Yeah.
You call your brain Becky?
Yes. Yeah.
Talk to me. So
Becky is a third party. Yeah. Becky is not me.
Okay.
So think about it. We think I think, therefore I am. I am that voice in my head. Now, simply if you realize that this is just a biological organ, okay? And the biological product of your brain is thoughts. And the currency of the brain is words, because the only building blocks of knowledge you have since you started to speak is words. Okay, and so accordingly, what your brain is doing is it's analyzing the world around it and presenting ideas so that you can choose. Now, if you think that those ideas are you telling you what to do, then you're going to obey. Okay, if it says, "Oh, life is miserable," then it must be true. Life must be miserable, but that's not the truth at all. If me and Becky are two different people, I can debate what Becky's telling me. I can refuse to obey what Becky's telling me to do. And I can tell Becky to shut the F up. Do you understand that? And I actually do it very often. I'm working on something and Becky comes up with an idea. "Oh, your daughter doesn't love you anymore." I'm like, "Becky, we're going to talk about this at 6. It's as simple as that, right? And your brain does what you tell it to do. I mean, anyone listening to us, if you tell your brain, "Raise my right hand," your brain is not going to raise your left foot. It's just going to obey. Just tell it. You're the boss. Okay, so when your brain poisons you with all of those thoughts, follow the flow chart. "Okay, Becky, vent a little bit. Then tell me, is this true? Is there something I can do about it? Can we accept it and do something despite its presence?" How difficult is that? And so most happiness practitioners, I interviewed my dear, dear friend Matthew Ricard on Slow-Mo. And Matthew Ricard is known as the world's happiest man. So 63,000 hours of lifetime meditation. Okay, his brain circuitry is literally different than ours. Okay, and I asked him and I said, "Matthew, so do you sometimes get unhappy?" And he laughed and in his funny French accent said, "What are you talking about? No, I'm pissed off all the time." Okay, and basically all happiness experts will tell you unhappiness is a survival mechanism. It's alerting you. Your brain is saying, "Hey, something is not perfect. Can you please look into this?" Right? The game is not to avoid that. That's actually harmful for you. You want to be aware of the things that might go wrong. Okay? The game is how quickly do you bounce back to happiness? From that moment where your brain says something is not right, how quickly do I go back to happiness? And I don't brag about this, but I say to encourage people. If I'm allowed to teach people about happiness, I need to be the Olympic champion of the sport. Okay? So I promise you, and I'm not bragging, on average, it takes me 7 seconds. From the time my brain suggests that something deserves my happiness to the time I either dismiss it because it's not true or decide what I'm going to do about it or decide to accept it and think what else I'm going to do is 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Okay? Yes, sometimes I get stuck in, maybe 3-4 times a year. I get stuck in something that takes me, a day to overcome. But most of the time, it's a very simple flow chart. It's a very logical process.
And you've had to train yourself to get to that point.
It's neuroplasticity. It is go to the gym. Okay? Write the flow chart on a piece of paper, and every time your emotion changes, look at it. Is it true? Can I do something about it? Can I accept it and do something despite its presence? It's really that simple.
And you talk a lot about, one of the illusions you said there was time.
Oh, I love time.
And the importance of presence. What role does time in being present? Because you talked about that. The world's happiest man, as you described him, being a great meditator. And I think from what I understand about meditation, although I'm not an expert, much of that is about bringing us to the present moment.
Totally. I mean, and I did an interesting analysis in Solve for Happy where I listed down the majority of human emotions and plotted them across where they are anchored in time and across if they're positive or negative. Okay? So you take an emotion like regret. Regret is anchored in the past. It's about something that happened in the past and it's negative. You take something like anxiety. Anxiety is anchored in the future. It's about something that might happen in the future and it's negative. Okay? The majority of negative emotions are anchored in the past and the future. The majority of positive emotions are anchored in the present moment. Okay? If you're here and now, there's absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, think about it this way. If you're listening to us having this conversation as one of our listeners, by definition, there is no tiger trying to eat you. The reality that, which is really shocking, the reality that you can feel unhappy about something in the past and the future is in itself evidence that now is okay. Because if there was a tiger trying to eat you right now, you wouldn't be thinking about losing your job in 3 weeks. Okay?
Yeah.
So the truth is, every time, remind yourself that the fact that I'm thinking about past and future is itself evidence that now is fine. There is a roof on top of my head. I'm obviously not starving. Okay? You have an electronic device that allows you to listen to us. Life is okay.
That's so crazy. I've never actually thought about that idea of practically of what you just said then, of that the person listening to this now, focusing on the sound of my voice, is not actually unhappy now.
Absolutely not.
They're not. When they stop listening to it, their thoughts might descend into unhappiness, past, future regret, whatever. But as they're listening to this, they're not actually in the state of unhappiness. They have to stop listening and stop engaging to
and think
create
about
room,
something else.
Yeah, to create space for that.
Remember Inception? The
Yeah.
At the beginning of Inception, the question was, what is the most deadly parasite or whatever? I don't remember. And he said, it's an idea. An idea. You have never, there is nothing in your life that has the power to make you unhappy until you turn it into a thought, a negative thought, and turn it into your head and torture yourself with it. Simple as that. Okay? If you're locked down and you're at home and you have food and you have shelter and you're not sick, and hopefully none of your family and loved ones is sick, okay? The only way you can get yourself to be unhappy is to say, I don't like this. I want life to be different, right? And that's not going to change life, interestingly, that thought, right? But it's going to change you and make you miserable. It's the only way you can make yourself unhappy.
You just lost another 8% of our listeners.
Yeah.